I'm Jim Snyder, the evening anchor at News 3, the NBC station here in town, and I'd like to welcome you to this very special August Chamber Membership Power Lunch. I want to tell you, it's a real honor for me to be a part of this event today as we celebrate, as the Chamber always does, the spirit of entrepreneurship and the business successes that you are all having. And more importantly today, the way that you can use those successes as you grow your businesses and you can create jobs to give those jobs to some people who have served our country. We are honored today, and you're going to be hearing from him, to have retired Sergeant First Class Norbie Lara and the Wounded Warrior Project's Warriors to Work division to speak with us today to share how hiring veterans re-entering the workforce can benefit your business and your country as well. Now, this brings us to really the highlight of today's event. We are pleased and honored to have a couple of guys in this room today. First, Marcus Barnes, who's with the Wounded Warrior Project's Warriors to Work division. He's going to be our first speaker this afternoon. The name really says a lot, but let me tell you a little more about the Wounded Warrior Project. It's a nonprofit organization whose mission is pretty simple: to honor and empower wounded warriors. Since its formation in 2002, the organization and its scope have grown dramatically, with over 1 million vets expected to enter the civilian workforce over the next 5 years. 1 million. One of the project's key missions is to help wounded warriors transition back into the civilian workforce by providing career counseling services and job placement assistance. And you can play a role in that. That's why we're all here today, to find out more about it. To talk about how easy it is for your business to support and hire a vet using the Wounded Warrior Project's Warrior to Work program is Warrior to Work specialist Marcus Barnes. Marcus?
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting us to come out here, the Wounded Warrior Project, specifically the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. Specifically, I'd like to thank Adam Kramer for extending an invitation to me and to come here and speak a little bit about Wounded Warrior Project. So one of the things that I like to try to clear up when I'm asked to speak a little bit about Wounded Warrior Project is that oftentimes I think in the marketplace, a lot of people will see the term Wounded Warrior in many different iterations of that, and they may think that that is just kind of one all-encompassing organization, when the reality of it is there are 3 types of Wounded Warrior programs. The first type is essentially Wounded Warrior programs that fall under the Department of Defense, that primarily provide specific services to service members who are wounded, ill, or injured. And the second type of Wounded Warrior program are a cadre of nonprofit organizations, of which we're one. And then the third type are employment-specific programs, typically through defense contracting agencies. And although all those programs kind of serve the same constituency, we aren't necessarily connected together. We have different eligibility requirements for our programs and different programmatic offerings. So with Wounded Warrior Project, as it was mentioned, we are a privately funded nonprofit. Our headquarters is in Jacksonville, Florida. And essentially the way that we honor and empower wounded warriors is through our 16 different programs and services that we offer. And our programs fall into 4 different categories, categories that cover the mind, the body, engagement, and economic empowerment. And so my program, Warriors to Work, essentially falls under economic empowerment. In the Warriors to Work program, we have 8 Warriors to Work specialists and 2 senior managers all throughout the country. So essentially what we do is we provide employment counseling services to post-9/11 service-connected service members, veterans, their spouses, and their caregivers. And any type of employment counseling, from reviewing resumes to mock interview skills, learning how to dress for success, and just to kind of get them through that transition period of when they actually got out of the service to kind of integrate themselves into the civilian sector. I know that for me, my transition process was much different. I know that for a lot of the men and women that are serving in this generation, their main focus is to have a career within a specific branch of service that they thought was going to last them for a while. And they had a very conscious decision to enter the service. For me, when I joined out of high school, essentially my thought process was, I needed to kind of grow up and see a little bit of the world, but I joined the Marine Corps with a friend of mine, essentially because he had a brother who was in the Marine Corps who drove a Mustang, lived in California, and wore a really cool uniform. So that was kind of my thought process to join the military, unlike the honorable reasons that folks are joining the military today. But I do remember how difficult my transition was getting out of the Marine Corps and not necessarily knowing where I fit. The rank structure is different. I was told what to wear for 6.5 years, and it was really kind of a scary place. And if you take that similar situation and compound that with visible wounds or non-visible wounds, it can be really tough. So I think that's part of the charge of the Warriors to Work program, is specifically to provide high-touch services to our constituency, and also to reach out to other businesses that are interested in bringing this viable workforce on board. Obviously, there are some companies that have specific requirements. So if there are people that are looking for work that meet your criteria, then it would be great to hire them or even kind of give them a shot. We also have volunteer programs. So if you go to our website, woundedwarriorproject.org, you have the capacity to volunteer. If you aren't able to extend an opportunity specifically to a wounded warrior or a spouse or caregiver. And then we also ask, if you're open to it, there's also job shadowing programs, because we know that sometimes there's a deficit in the skill set that some of the service members have that they need in order to become a more viable candidate across different industries. So we just ask that you take a look and consider hiring wounded veterans. They definitely are a very viable workforce. And if you have any particular questions about it, I'm the Warriors to Work specialist for Nevada, California, Hawaii, and some parts of Texas. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be available after the luncheon for any questions. And thank you so much for your time.
Marcus, thank you, and thank you for serving. Most importantly, I bet you look cool in the uniform too, didn't you? I got to know, did you buy the Mustang? No. All right. We do appreciate his comments, filling us in a little bit on the nuts and bolts of how the Wounded Warrior Project works. And now it's my real honor to introduce retired Sergeant First Class Norbie Lara. He's our keynote speaker today. And I want to tell you a little bit about him. Norbie is from Visalia, California, headed back there today. He proudly served in the United States Army for 11.5 years, including deployments in Kuwait, Bosnia, and Iraq. And judging from the comments that you made on our newscast last night, I get the feeling you wish you were still serving. He didn't work out that way. He was medically retired as a Sergeant First Class after something that happened in Iraq in 2004, and I'll let him tell you more about that. Norbie represented the Army at the State of the Union address in 2005. You may have seen him on TV. He was First Lady Laura Bush's honored guest. He was awarded Veteran of the Year for both the 34th California Assembly District and by the Visalia Veterans Committee. Norbie's awards include the Combat Action Badge, the Purple Heart, and the Bronze Star. Now, since retiring, the most impressive thing is, he's paid it forward. Norbie has helped many wounded warriors like himself transition to their new life after injury on the battlefield by introducing them to the Wounded Warrior Project. And he's here today to share his powerful story with us. So please join me with a very warm welcome on this rainy day for Mr. Norbie Lara.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So today I'm here to share my story with you. I always say that the best way for the American public to realize what a wounded warrior goes through is one wounded warrior story at a time. So my story is just one. I am one of over 48,000 that have a physical injury, one of more than 320,000 that have come back with a traumatic brain injury, and one of over an estimated 400,000 that have come back with some type of depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. I wanted to serve my country from the time I was a small boy. I followed my brother's example. He served during the 70s. And I joined in 1995. I was a military policeman, and I remember the very first time I donned a uniform and looked at myself in a full-length mirror. That was the proudest moment in my life. After my training, I went over to Korea, where I learned just about everything there was to learn about being a combat MP. After that, I went to 1st Cav over at Fort Hood. I did a deployment to Kuwait and one to Bosnia, and I said, okay, I am done. I've almost hit my 5-year mark. I'll re-enlist one more time to be close to my kids as I transition out, trying to find a job, to Fort Irwin, California, with the idea in mind. I was going to await for that enlistment to be over as I applied for police jobs back in Visalia. And as I was doing that, on September 11th of 2001, a bunch of cowards boarded some planes and killed a bunch of innocent people. And there was absolutely no way that I could sit on the sidelines as my brothers and sisters went off to battle. I was a staff sergeant at the time, and I had trained my whole entire career to lead and train them and take them into battle. So I re-enlisted one more time for Fort Stewart, Georgia, which is home of 3rd ID. I got there in in December of 2003, and by March of 2004, I was boots on the ground in Baqaba, Iraq. Our mission there was to provide training for new Iraqi police officers, and my squad's mission was to provide security for the small little compound that we were in, which was surrounded on 3 sides by housing, and on some days the families would be waving from the rooftops, and some other days rocket-propelled grenades would be fired from those same rooftops. So it was always exciting. We were located in the Sunni Triangle, or Triangle of Death, a very busy area. In June of 2004, my squad was tasked with a 24-hour operation for a quick reactionary force. Main mission in mind was there was a battle going on about 3 miles up the road, and we were to provide security for that ambulance to take any service members off that were injured back to the hospital. So we get a call. I place the ambulance in our convoy, and we go as fast as we can to try and get this soldier off the battlefield. And as we're going up ahead of my vehicle, I can see women and children start to run away from the road. And I call for my gunners to take a low profile. I knew we were about to be ambushed, or a roadside bomb was about to go off, and 2 of them did go off, one in front of my number 2 vehicle and one behind it. Thankfully, they weren't very good at that time at making roadside bombs, and all it did was just blow out all the tires. We continued on, got that soldier off the battlefield, dropped him off at the hospital, and me thinking it was a safer route, took a different way to get back to our forward operating base. And we went through a part of a city which was normally very heavily populated. It's a marketplace. There's a bunch of people always out there, and there was nobody around. So I called my gunners to take a low profile, and another roadside bomb goes off. It hits another one of my vehicles. Thankfully, no one was injured. It just blew out all the tires. In Up Armor Humvees, we have what's called run flats, and they can go for a short distance. So we got back to our forward operating base, where I had missions waiting for me and my squad. So we took all of the equipment off of those 2 disabled vehicles, and we threw them in new vehicles, and there we go off again. Up until our last mission at 3 a.m., that was just about what was going on during that 24-hour operation. We kept responding to more soldiers being injured, to insurgent activity, you name it. So by 3 a.m., we were pretty tired, but we had one mission left, and that was to provide a security patrol, a combat patrol in the area. The patrol that just went out before us had already been hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, so we knew the enemy was in the area. So for the first hour, it was pretty quiet. There was nobody around. There's a curfew in place. The only people out there are just military personnel. Second hour in, I tell my driver to take a right-hand turn. When he takes that right-hand turn, I immediately see a brilliant flash of light, and my ears begin to ring. The vehicle begins to fill with smoke, and there's commotion all inside of my vehicle. And the vehicle begins to slow. Well, training dictates if your vehicle is disabled, you need to get out of that vehicle. It's now going to become a target. So I start reaching for the door handle, and I reach for the door handle, and it won't open. So I reach over with my left hand, and I realize that my entire arm is gone. And I pretty much went into shock. I was trying to make sense of why my door was still intact, but my arm was gone. What would happen was when we turned that corner, an insurgent had fired a rocket-propelled grenade. It went through the firewall of my vehicle, went through my arm, went through my lieutenant's arm, which was later amputated as well, exploded behind her, was sent shrapnel through the back of my seat, lacerated my liver. I inhaled when the rocket exploded, which severely damaged my lungs. And because of my close proximity to the blast, I suffered from a brain injury. So somehow, our driver was able to get that vehicle going again, and we got out of the kill zone. Where the very same ambulance that we had been escorting the day before was waiting for us now. And we get placed in the ambulance, and we're rushed over to the hospital. And I'm placed in a medically induced coma. And after 2 months, I awoke at Walter Reed, our medical center, with an entirely new path in front of me. As I lay there, I just knew that my life was over and all my years were behind me. What could I do now? What good am I to anyone now? I did a lot of crying. I was 31 years old at the time. I just felt hopeless and hopeless, really. And then I was introduced to Wounded Warrior Project. They came to my bedside, and I have had a relationship with them throughout my recovery. One of the very first things they did for me was to take me skiing, where I was taught by a Vietnam veteran who had lost both his arms. And just after that one event, that life-changing event that showed me that my life had been changed forever, but it was far from over. And I kept looking for challenges in front of me. And I wondered what else was out there. Well, they took me rock climbing and skydiving, snowboarding, which I hate, and the love of my life now, which is golf. And it is the coolest thing to play someone who has never played me and bet them dinner or something later on, because I beat them down. So I retire in 2006, and I go back home, and I'm retired. I'm getting a paycheck. Uncle Sam's still paying me, but I don't have a purpose. And that is very, very bad for someone who is only 31 years old to be getting paid and not having a purpose. Depression started to set in, and the only time that I would feel okay was to go on other Wounded Warrior Project trips along to other warriors so we can still share our stories with one another, and that was pretty much the only time I could feel normal at that time. Luckily for me, on one of the trips, one of the deputy executive directors for Wounded Warrior Project came to me and he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Nothing." He said, "Why?" "I don't know. What good am I to anybody? I mean, who's going to hire me?" And they did. They hired me as the West Coast Area Outreach Coordinator, a new position. And what that entailed was just going out and finding wounded warriors like myself who felt helpless and hopeless after coming back from battle and not having anything in front of them again. And I got to introduce them to our programs and be their friend. And I did that for 3 years. And it was amazing that while I was doing that, I realized that I was given a purpose again. And my entire life changed. As I was helping transition their lives, my whole life was in transition itself. And I became more confident in myself and so thankful for this life that I've been blessed with. And I get to come out and see audiences who are here to help any way they can, to help these men and women that are coming home and that need our support, whatever that might be. So hopefully today I have given you a story worth sharing with your neighbors and your family. I go to share my story not to just enlist the aid, but also that in this room, I know there are individuals that have family members or neighbors or aunts or uncles or sons that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan who need help, and they don't know where to turn. And that's what we're here for. If you'd like to employ one of us, or if you'd like to support us in any way, please visit our website, woundedwarriorproject.org. It's a great opportunity to change someone's life, and in cases like mine, it actually saved my life. Thank you very much for your time during the lunch.
Wow, what a powerful story. And as you pointed out at the beginning, that's one of thousands, and tens of thousands that are out there. Thank you, Mr. Lara. We do appreciate your comments, and thank you for serving. If you're as inspired as I was by what he had to say, and you want to engage your business in hiring veterans returning through the Warriors to a work project, there is some literature at your table that can kind of get you started, and you can look into it more from there. If you think about, your company and the success of your company, and being able to tap in to that kind of character, somebody who's been through something like that, I think you see the benefits are very clear. It's just about time to wrap up today's lunch. We've done a good job. We're going to make it out of here by one. Kara? I want to give Marcus Barnes and Norbie Lara another round of applause for their time and perspective. We truly appreciate both of you being here, and again, your service to your country. And next time you're in Visalia, look Norbie up on the golf course. I'm sure he'd be happy to take your money too, right? A personal note before we close, I end up doing quite a few of these throughout the year, and I can't tell you how many times I'm handed a scrap of paper with some very minimal information and some things crossed out and some arrows and just told to wing it. And that is not this event, and it's because of the hard work of Kara Roberts, and I want you to know how well she serves your chamber with her organization, and her support has been great planning for this. So thanks for that, Kara. And before we go, one more big thank you to our sponsors, Chamber Insurance and Benefits, Chase, Shred It, and Switch. Thank you again. Want to thank Richard DePasso of Aardvark Video for videotaping today's luncheon. He's back there with the big camera. How about a teleprompter next time, Richard? Would that be too much? And also Las Vegas Photo and Video for their services today. And we cannot forget the wonderful staff here at the Four Seasons for our fabulous lunch today, as well as the staff of the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce for putting it all together. Thank you all very much. It has been an honor to be a part of this today and to hear these stories. Be careful out there driving on the wet roads. Have a great afternoon.